What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Commissioner's Office podcast. My name is Daniel, and it has been a little while since my last episode. And my last episode, fittingly, was evaluating the Bears halfway through the season. Well, as I'm recording this, I'm just 2 hours and change out from the end of the Bears' final game of the 2023 season. And so, it's evaluation time yet again. But I felt that I needed to address the end of the Bears season. As, you know what, we had already established that we weren't going to make the playoffs this year. But we had a chance to go into Lambeau Field in the final game and knock the Packers out of the playoffs, but we came up short. The Bears fell to the Packers 17-9. A crushing defeat. For sure. There was lots of hype coming into this game. I think the narrative kind of formed in the week leading up to the game that the fate of our quarterback, Justin Fields, as well as the fate of our head coach, Matt Eberflus, rested on the outcome of this game. Basically, if they won, especially in convincing fashion, that maybe, just maybe, people's jobs would be saved, but if they lost, the Bears would make significant changes in the offseason. I remember Kyle Brandt was the big guy that kind of started to push this. I don't necessarily disagree with it. I didn't necessarily disagree with it at the time, but I was not sure if it's truly that simple that, you know, if they won this game, they would have had that much more confidence. But, of course, they did not win the game. Justin Fields in his final game, potentially with the Chicago Bears, finished 11 of 16 with 148 passing yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He rushed for 27 yards as well. Not a very significant game from him, and I'll talk about that more later. On the surface, the defense wasn't terrible. I mean, 17 points to a Packers team that has been pretty hot offensively may not sound too bad, but then you consider 432 yards of total offense from the Packers, and the fact that Green Bay didn't even punt once in this game. Now, of course, it is worth noting that Jalen Johnson, our top corner, and Darnell Mooney, our second wide receiver, didn't play in this game, and then Nate Davis, our right guard, did miss most of the game as he got injured early on. But even with all of the injury troubles in mind, it's still hard for me to justify this team's performance. And just warning my audience here, I know there's a certain sect of you guys that don't exactly like it when I get a little bit angry and maybe start to rant. But I also know that there is a sect of my audience that kind of does like it when I rant. Well, for the latter sect, you're getting your wish, because I'm going to get this out of the way right now. This was not a fun game to watch. I'm not exactly in the best mood after watching this game. So if this comes off as more of a rant episode, so be it. I haven't had one in a while. This game may have been one of the most infuriating Bears games to watch since the double doink. I mean, it got to the point where I was in my living room swearing at my television in front of my parents and family, which I don't normally do. Just to make that clear, I'm not usually that animated. But I was just getting so angry at this game. First and foremost, Luke Getsy has consistently proved why he does not deserve to be anywhere near a play call sheet. His play calling was so predictable and conservative this season, it makes Matt Nagy look like Mike McDaniel. I mean, it felt like every single drive in this game started with this same pistol halfback toss to the strong side. And it didn't even work. The Bears are like the second best rushing team in the entire NFL, and we only had 75 rushing yards. And this was one of our better games if you actually watched it and watched how they ran this stupid halfback toss. Why are we running the ball out of pistol? It makes no sense. I get throwing different packages at the defenders, but it got to the point where you just knew what they were going to do. Every single time on first down, when you get the ball back, they would come out in this dumb pistol formation, and they would do this pointless toss to where Khalil Herbert or Roshan Johnson couldn't even go to the outside. He cut back inside. It makes no sense why we consistently do the same things overall, and this is why he deserves to be fired. And if you thought that was bad enough, why is Justin Fields throwing the ball 16 times in the biggest game of his career? Why is he only throwing the ball 16 times? It is clear to me when it comes to Luke Getsy that he has absolutely no confidence in Justin Fields, but at least try to cater to his skill set. Don't you still want a job? It is becoming a chore watching this offense at certain points because it is clear that Getsy just doesn't care about Fields' skill set. He's just trying to shove him into this stupid Aaron Rodgers pocket passing offense. And I get there's been more QB runs as the season goes on, but this is the same guy that made Tyson Bagent look way more comfortable in the Bears offense than Justin Fields, a guy who's starting in his third season now and the second season with this system. It's just ridiculous. I feel like every time Fields plays, it's just going to be some crapshoot of what kind of play calling you're going to get from Luke Getsy. Where is the consistency? Like, when I watched this game, I thought we were crushed in time of possession. I thought Green Bay absolutely had the ball for most of the game, but that's not even true. Green Bay had the ball for 31 minutes. The Bears had the ball for 28. So you basically take out the last 3 minutes of the game where Green Bay was just salting the clock away, and the time of possession was even. It should not have felt that uneven. It's probably because we just took so much time off the clock because we were just running the ball every damn play. It just makes no sense. This game ended at like 6:20 Central Time. That's like an hour before Sunday Night Football starts. Half of those games in the late window, they end at like 7 if they're a close game. And this game was close. It just, the clock management, the play calling decisions makes absolutely no sense. And especially on this stage, when you have everything to prove and everything's on the line. This is about as consequential of a game as it gets with a team that is not going to make the playoffs, and they completely bungled it. I mean, why did Fields not throw the ball over 25 yards in this entire game when we had all of this time of possession? We had so many explosive plays in the snow versus Atlanta, but today against the Packers, we couldn't throw the ball deep at all. Did you see the first drive? Did you see all of those sidearm throws and traffic that Fields was making? Why couldn't you have done that when you actually got the ball again? Half of the time, it wasn't even, you can't even use, Jair Alexander, top 5 corner in the league, as an excuse. Half of the time, Green Bay didn't even put him on DJ Moore. And DJ Moore only had like 4 catches. You can't even use that as an excuse. Equanimous St. Brown caught an 18-yard pass on the first drive, and he never got another target in this game. Why? Where is any of the creativity? You can't make the excuse of our O-line being horrible in this situation, because bad trench play has been an NFL-wide problem this season. Who actually has had a good offensive line this season? There are not that many teams. I get Green Bay has a good defensive line. They have Rashawn Gary, who's making $100 million in the next couple years. They have Kenny Clark, all-pro, I think, all Pro Bowl defensive tackle. They have Devontae Wyatt. They still have Preston Smith. But this performance from the offensive line was horrible. They made Lucas Patrick look like prime Jason Kelsey when he was healthy. I mean, Lucas Patrick was by far the weak point on our offensive line, and he goes down for one game, and this is how much worse we are? Are you kidding me? This is how bad our depth is? Like, our starting offensive line isn't even that good, and our worst starter goes down, and this is how bad it was? Like, this isn't even a problem concerning the tackles. Darnell Wright had like 1 holding penalty on a play where Fields had to roll out, but for the most part shut down Rashawn Gary, and Braxton Jones has been fine at left tackle. What happened to Tevin Jenkins? What happened to this guy? At almost every sack that Fields took today, it was because he just completely folded. I mean, This is what happens when we continuously neglect the center position and instead choose to play washed up guys like Cody Whitehair or like converted guards like Cody Whitehair and Dan Feeney and Lucas Patrick. If the Eagles and Chiefs haven't proved how important centers are in the modern NFL, then I don't know who will. That Chiefs offensive line is not very good, but they have Creed Humphrey, and it helps so much. It's the same thing with the Eagles offensive line when they've had all their injuries. The one constant is Jason Kelce, and they still remain a good group. With the Bears, we don't have a good center, so we have to just watch our quarterback get crushed after like dropping back for 1 second. It's so ridiculous. Bears fans who watch this offense and conclude that Fields is the problem, I think either just have a vendetta against this guy, are straight up delusional, or are just glazing Caleb Williams. His only incompletions in this game were either batted down or under extremely intense pressure. I would say that you can argue that he made one bad throw on an otherwise really good read where he threw it into the end zone to, I think it was Cole Kmet, and it was almost picked off. But half the time he's running the ball is when he's slipping on the turf because Lambeau Field just turned into vintage Soldier Field for some reason. I don't understand how people watch this game specifically against the Packers, and they're like, yeah, Fields is the problem. You are only looking at the scoreboard. You are only looking at the fact that we scored 9 points. And don't give me the argument of, oh, great players will just make something happen. What is Patrick Mahomes doing with this offense? I'm sorry. Fields is as good of an escape artist as anyone else in this league, but he can't escape when our interior offensive line is folding every play. I'm not usually someone who complains about bad refereeing in the NFL. I feel like it's just part of the game, but why does Fields get no calls? There is a blatant unnecessary roughness penalty on that one play where he rolled out right and slid. He got knocked in the head. His head bounced off the turf like a basketball, and they didn't call a penalty. This happens literally every game. And to make it even worse, they don't call a penalty, but then you force Fields out of the game 2 plays later just so he can go into the tent and just come right back out the next play. I thought it wasn't a penalty. Why are you taking him out of the game if it wasn't a dirty hit? After all, he's a running QB, and any hits that he takes, he deserves because he chooses not to protect himself. If this was Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow taking that hit that he took, that player probably would have been ejected. I'm not kidding. That's how stupid the hit was. And he gets this every single week. I literally jumped out of my couch and started cursing at the TV when I saw that. I was so confident it was going to be a penalty. I was so pissed off, but he didn't even get penalized for it. This is a consistent problem with the NFL refs and Justin Fields. It is an inherent bias against running QBs. At least Lamar Jackson has kind of earned the reputation and the status to get those calls. But Fields, he gets no calls every single week. He never complains to the refs, but he actually does the opposite, and he warns the referees before each game that he's going to get hit. You better watch out for it. And he still doesn't get any calls. This is the kind of crap that I watch, and I actually understand when people are like, oh yeah, I think this is scripted. I think this league is rigged. Absolutely none of the sacks that Fields took this game were his fault. Absolutely none of them. All of them were because the interior defensive line folded immediately after the snap, and Dan Feeney, the center, couldn't even snap if his life depended on it. This is not the issue of, oh, Fields is holding onto the ball too long. That is a problem that was solved in September. This is not an issue of him holding the ball too long, okay? This is a consistent pattern of problems with the interior offensive line that the Bears have neglected for years now. I mean, how many years is it going to be before we draft a center in the first round? How many years is it going to be before we draft a guard in the first round? We can't just put in these plug and play right guards or sign some random dude off the Dolphins practice squad and just be like, yeah, he'll be our starting center. I just don't get it. If I'm Justin Fields, why the hell would I stay here? Okay. His offensive coordinator has more confidence in a rookie quarterback from a Division II school to run the offense. His defense isn't ready for prime time, and he plays for a franchise that hasn't had a decent starting QB since, I don't know, the Truman administration. I get the argument from Bears fans that they're like, oh, he hasn't shown enough. But what is Caleb Williams doing in this offense? I'm sorry. What is Caleb Williams actually going to be doing? Is he even going to play for us if we draft him? You know it's just going to be, there's a really good chance that he ends up like Bo Jackson or John Elway or Peyton Manning or Eli Manning. Like, the idea that we could just plug in Caleb Williams and everything would be totally fine is delusional at best. I went out to bat for Matt Eberflus. I really did. The most loyal of my listeners remember on the radio show when I went through the short list of head coaches and then decided that Eberflus was the favorite of the four and he was the one that I wanted the most. And I was genuinely excited when I hired him. And I'll give him the fact that although this game wasn't good, he's done a solid job rebuilding the defense. But this game is just, you can't just brush it off. Was Jalen Johnson really this important to the defense? Where were any of the adjustments? The Packers were basically just running the same high-low concept every play, and we continued to sit our linebackers yards behind the sticks. It just doesn't make any sense. Every single play, it felt like Jordan Love was throwing some 15-yard pass over the middle, or he was throwing some 5-yard check down over the middle, while our linebackers were caught in no man's land, and the receiver can just advance 10 yards up for free. It doesn't make any sense. This is a guy who's supposed to specialize in linebackers. Like, how does he not realize that whatever his game plan was clearly did not work? I get that Matt Eberflus is not a horrible coach. I get that it's not some Urban Meyer situation. But let me ask you this, a genuine question for Bears fans. Can you picture Matt Eberflus raising the Lombardi Trophy as our head coach? Because at this point, it's kind of getting difficult for me to do that. I'm not even mad at Poles for hiring Matt Eberflus. He had to choose from a short list of head coaches chosen by George McCaskey and a Ted Phillips who had one foot out the door anyway. He tried to make the best out of a really weird hand that he was dealt right after he was hired. And I said that the best argument for firing Flus was because of the scandals that the Bears aren't known for, like Alan Williams resigning, David Walker resigning, that I praised his response to David Walker resigning when it happened because I thought he handled it better than what happened with Alan Williams. Here's a better argument. You get the personal scandal on the team as well as a 2-6 record against divisional opponents, not being able to beat Green Bay, even at home, even without Aaron Rodgers? How about continuously blowing leads because of a defense that you're calling plays for? The Detroit losses and the Cleveland losses, sure, Getsy had a role in conservative play calling, but number one, he's your offensive coordinator. You can fire him anytime you want. And two, you're the defense. You are the person who is overseeing a defense that played well for 3 quarters and then just gives up 12 points in 3 minutes. How about passing up a 55-yard field goal at the end of before halftime and instead throwing a pointless Hail Mary when you know they never work in the modern NFL, and, oh yeah, giving your prized QB just another unnecessary hit? How many times has he done this? I feel like every Hail Mary the Bears do, it doesn't work. Surprise, because Hail Marys never work, and Fields just takes some crazy hit that just gets him even more injured than he already is. We better hope that Kevin Warren actually knows what he's doing, or Ryan Poles has power and not George McCaskey, or else we legitimately have no hope at this point. Like, I don't even know what to say about the QB position at this point. Like, we have beaten this into the ground so hard that there's no right decision in here. I mean, we are for sure going nowhere with anyone as our QB as long as Luke Getsy has a job. If we keep Fields, which I'm fine with under certain circumstances, one of them being we need a guy who actually wants to cater to his skill set, not some hack who has this mentality of, ooh, I can fix him. Like, this is the crux of the issue when it comes to the QB position, is that I am seriously doubting Luke Getsy's motivation to actually want to call a good game. I kind of think that he's just throwing some random stuff at the wall and hoping that Fields bails him out. Because, in my opinion, he's either too arrogant to change his prized offense, or he just doesn't care enough to do the work to actually make Fields into a good player by using his skill set. I can complain all I want about how bad they're treating Fields, but I don't even think he's going to come back to Chicago after this game. I don't know how you can justify it unless you're keeping Matt Eberflus. And personally, I don't think he's going to get fired, but if he does, there's almost no way a new head coach comes in and decides to keep Fields. That may please a lot of the Bears fans who want Caleb Williams or another quarterback, but let me ask you this. If we fire Eberflus, what happens to the defense? Sure, we'll get an offensive head coach probably, but we're going to have to find another guy who can inherit a defense that's pretty solid and pretty talented, but actually get them playing up to ability. That is easier said than done. Just look at what the Bears did after Vic Fangio left. We had a couple coordinators with kind of differing periods of success, but ultimately they weren't able to get us back to the 2018 form. It's sad because I think Bears fans this season have been taken on a crazy ride. We started off the season with all this momentum, which I think was artificial, and then it crashed. And we put ourselves in such a hole that we just continue to complain about how bad our team is. But in reality, because of how mid everyone in the NFL has been this year, if we didn't blow our lead to Cleveland and Detroit, maybe won the Tampa Bay game, we probably would have made the playoffs. I mean, sure, Jordan Love looks like a good player and the future of Green Bay, but Green Bay only went 9 and 8, 10 and 7. I mean, like, that is not, they went 9 and 8 this season. Detroit only won 11 games. I mean, that is not super difficult considering we were just sitting at 7 and 10. And the irony about this is that I think, especially with Montez Sweat added to the roster, this current team that we watched play this season, I think was easily the best team that we've had since 2018. I think that it's better than some of those Khalil Mack teams after 2018. I think our quarterback play was better. I think our offense was more explosive. We should have done better. But we put ourselves in this crazy, like, mind-numbing rift of expectations. Because going into this season, I was very vocal that this team was not going to go 14-3. This team was not going to be a Super Bowl contender. I think 8 wins would be optimistic, and that maybe we'll sneak into the playoffs because the NFC North was looking weak. And it kind of was weak this season. The Lions were good as we expected. The Packers were mid as we expected. The Vikings kind of crashed and burned as we expected. We knew that this team, deep down, we all knew this team was not going to be 13-4 like the Eagles. But the national media made this one-to-one comparison about Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, third year. Oh, they must do the same thing, without understanding why Jalen Hurts was so good. They didn't understand that Jalen Hurts basically inherited a Super Bowl winning team from 5 years prior with Philadelphia, a team that still had one of the best offensive lines in the league, a team that continued to be aggressive in chasing and spending the money to improve their defense, a team that traded significant draft capital for A.J. Brown, who I think safely has statistically, and if you actually watch the game, is a better receiver than DJ Moore. I love DJ Moore, but he's not A.J. Brown. In reality, Justin Fields may have more natural talent than Jalen Hurts, as I heard a commentator say last week, but the situations that the two quarterbacks were in could not have been more different. So those saying that the Bears were going to do the same thing as the Eagles did were just blind, in my opinion. I don't know how else to put it. We said last year that the upcoming offseason, would be the most pivotal offseason in team history. We went out and we signed Tremaine Edmonds, we signed TJ Edwards. In my opinion, this upcoming offseason is infinitely more consequential. Look, I've been doing this podcast ranting about the Bears since the days of Mitch Trubisky, which now are kind of long ago and make me feel very old. Honestly, I don't know what the answer is. The reason why I continue to have optimism is the fact that at the moment, I like what our GM's doing. And for the first time since the 1990s, our immediate future and team personnel decisions will not be decided with Ted Phillips breathing down the GM's neck. That's something to look forward to. You know, I was talking to this with my family, and I was saying that there's so many cynical Bears fans out there that believe that the McCaskies really don't have a motivation for winning. They're just kind of going through the motions. But I don't personally think that's true. And you can disagree with me. I think the McCaskies show plenty of fight. I just don't think they know how to. Hence why they hire all of these random retired NFL players and GMs to help choose their GM and head coach. I think you look at who their new president is, Kevin Warren. If you're looking at that guy and thinking that he's just like Ted Phillips, a yes man to the McCaskies, I don't know what you're looking at, because I doubt that Kevin Warren would just kind of roll over when the McCaskies demand him to do something. And if he truly has the control that they say he does, I think this is truly a moment where the Bears will be different from the previous decades of team leadership. The only thing we can do is we can wake up tomorrow morning and see the news on who is getting fired, who is not getting fired, and just hope that this team goes in the right direction. Man, I had to let off some steam there. I mean, the HB toss, just cut it out of the playbook, man. Well, guys, that's going to conclude another episode of the Commissioner's Office podcast. If you made it this far, I wanted to thank you for listening. I know this might have been a little bit of a harsh episode, but you know, when we lose to the Packers, I have to blow off some steam sometimes. That's just how the rivalry has been. So if you enjoy hearing me talk about the Bears or anything sports really, make sure to check out my page on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can check out my other episodes. I've been doing this podcast for a pretty long time, so I got some old episodes if you want to dig deep into my previous content. If you have suggestions for a future episode, you know where to find me. Please let me know. I'm always looking for new topics for a future podcast episode. Once again, I wanted to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Commissioner's Office podcast, and I will see you all next time.